Right up here in front of the canopy. I gotta start working on it. It's a nice setting right here next to the garden.
you can even take, and it's the way I do it, supplement once a week. So 2,000 micrograms of cyanocobalamin.
Mercy and compassion, or was I on the blind side?
To Jesus, it's compassion that got the Jews out of bondage and to the.
And yet all we see is something wrapped in plastic and styrofoam.
Surprised that people who consider themselves spiritual,
like they can't touch their moms, which is really important, and the only real physical just to be able to have time with each other and like quality relationships with each other.
Whether it be the environmental challenges, the issues of poverty, health, conflict, it's just harnessing the power of religion for the glory.
In Tacoma Park, Maryland, where we met Nazarick Amen, a naturopathic doctor.
I wanted to check because it's an awesome movie, and I just want to thank the awesome maker of this movie, Thomas, and there he is.
Yeah!
And he did a great job.
Suggested to him to stop all the dairy. Within 2 weeks, his blood sugar came down.
See the holiness in everything. When my children were born,
To answer.
All around this great big world, I'm gonna let it shine.
Took him, or if he came back and we took him to a slaughterhouse, or he knew what was going on with the planet, how do you think he would feel about it? It's almost like Jesus talked about the spirit of the law and the letter of the law. Like, in the letter of the law, you can justify anything, and that's why Jesus always said, go back to the spirit of the law. Like, meditate on these things. And so, I really was hoping to come away where you have an ironclad case, but in the long run, it's not. It's really, you have to argue with people's heart, and you have to. That's why I think you have to use compassion and not the way to do it. But what you can say is, ideally, like it's set up in the Genesis, it's ideally we were told to eat plant-based, and 3 verses before that we were given dominion. So there's no way you can say dominion gives us the right to kill and eat animals. What you can do is plant a seed and just kind of love them in some way. I mean, it really hit home last year in October. My dad passed from a stroke. And 2 years before that, I'd sat down with him, and he was Christian. I sat down with him, and I pitched all the reasons that it's an alignment. And also I told him, look, because he would say, well, what if, I told him about the people I met, what if they're lying to you? I said, well, what if they were? I said, imagine in your church, if you changed, and there was because he's been on statins forever, and I said, people could see a difference. Imagine, they would know you weren't lying. I said, imagine what you could do, and all of these things, and him and his wife were like, we're not going to do it or whatever. And then when I'm sitting in the intensive care or whatever right before he passed, his wife was saying, we live healthy. His favorite food was grits and eggs, And right after that, I read a study about eggs and how much it contributed to stroke. And she said the last meal he had was this big hamburger steak. And most of us seen Game Changers. We see how the blood, like you've seen that thing with the blood vial and how thick it gets. My heart, I know that steak was the last thing that created that blood clot in his brain that took him out. And so there's a part of me that feels like, I totally failed. I could have pushed harder and could have done that. And I've had that conversation. It's really gotten me to where I talk to my family who is suffering more one-on-one. Because when I talk with the husband or wife, the other one's always like, hey, ain't going to do it or ain't going to do that, But just a couple weeks ago, I talked to my mom, and she was just really clear, even if my stepdad wasn't there, that she's just, you're not going to change. I'm older. See, I believe everything you're saying. And if I died tomorrow, it'd be my problem. It don't, because she could see how it's played on me. She's like, don't want me to have the guilt, but she knows it. So even when people know it, sometimes they're not going to change. So that's my hardest lesson, is learning that no matter how hard I went and how far I went, and I tried to bring this elixir home, unless somebody's willing to drink that elixir, there's nothing you can do, man. You have to just move on and try to remember. Everybody here who's an activist, I know in your heart you know somebody that you reached. You know somebody who's different today because of what you did. And that's what we have to remind ourselves. We have to really remind ourselves that that we are making a difference, and by normalizing it, you know, it will happen. But it's not at our, it's just like I wanted this movie to be over in 6 months. I didn't realize it was going to be the adventure it was, and it wouldn't have been the same if divine timing didn't happen. So we're going to lose some people. There's other family members I'm going to lose, but I really in my heart believe that as it gets normalized more and more and more, that there will be changes. And as it gets easier, you know, it's so easy now, but so many people just, like my mom, I don't know how to cook without it. I don't know what to do, you know. I mean, I feel like I watch them feed other people and they're going off and being sick, and I'm like, don't you realize you're poisoning your family? And that's not what they want to do, but they just shut down to it. So I feel like I did fail that mission of bringing it to my home. And the other is when I watched the beginning of this and watched the first act, like this new film, I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to, because a lot of people won't watch this because of the violence and stuff. The new film has a lot less of the violence. It's more kind of to encourage people and inspire people without shocking them as much. And with that first act, like, how do I set up that without, I watch it, I'm like, I love the first act. I'd sit in and watch the first act, and I'm like, how do I, like, if somebody's never seen this film, how do I get them to feel that same thing? You know, the dad trying to make a better world for his daughter without repeating it. So those two things have been my biggest obstacle. Probably some of that she automatically, like, is shutting off because of the trigger. You know, she automatically, like, a lot of us changed. Like, I changed without knowing any vegans. I'd seen animals killed for food, and when I started meditating every day, when I started to eat, I was like, wait a minute, this is a dead, all that sensitivity came back, and I was like, I don't want to be part of that. And so it was a natural thing for me, but I was away from home. I was in New York. I wasn't being surrounded by people who were pigeonholing me. So it's not just about veganism. It's like, if you never left your community, like, you are placed in this role, and you never really get to see and define who you are because you have been defined your whole life. And I think so much is getting people away from that thing. And the first thing your mom did is reach out to somebody else, you know?
Yeah, my brother.
Yeah, would you unnecessarily hurt them? Because most of them will say no, but they think it's necessary. We got to do this. This is just the way it is. That's the way God made it, you know? And it's not true, you know? But it's really hard to break out. I mean, I can't understand it. Like, for a long time, I couldn't understand why people just didn't get it. Once you know it, why don't you get it? Until I realized, for some people, it's hard. They never got away. They're still in that being pigeonholed.
Hey, it was really hard for me. You can ask my wife. I fought her tooth and nail. I'm like, I will never be a vegan. I will never do this. I will never do that. I love sea life. I grew up in Maryland after, you know, I'm like, I love sea life. I just feel.
But see, you're right there. You're an example that people will say never and that they will.
And I did.
You know what I mean? That's what you got to realize. I've met so many people that they've said that they've met this person said never ever, and they changed. So, you know, I like to keep hope in that. And it may not be like, you may not be the one that gets to them, but you planted some seeds. Somebody else may get to them. They may be able to hear it different, or they see the person, you know, that was sick get better. My sister's got the same thing about eating ice cream, and she's got so many things. And her daughter, who's like 21, has IBS, and all of the, like, it's just not natural. And, you know, the hardest thing is like, once we know this, once we know that they're suffering unnecessarily, it almost feels like a curse. It feels like, I'm watching this happen. I know it's unnecessary, but there's nothing I can do. I can't say a word to him. I don't know if you remember Cassandra in Greek mythology. She was like the slave girl who had the gift of being able to see the future, but she was cursed that no one would ever believe her. So she would say, don't go and do this, and then people would be massacred because they didn't listen to her. So I feel like that's where I'm at too. Like, it hurts so bad to know something so true after you met people like yourself. I mean, not just making the film, but since I made the film, I'll be at the Q&A and they'll say, yeah, 3 weeks ago I was on all this medication, or, you know, did my whole life change? And it's just, I'm watching people suffer unnecessarily, and that's really, it's a big burden, you know.